So not only do I like to give my opinion on things that are just happening in the world, but I'm also really super nosy and I love to read other people's business. So we are gonna look at the Reddit thread, Am I the Asshole, right? For those of you who don't know who this is, it's a really good read, like at nighttime. Oh, by the way, I've like punctured my eyeball, so it's a little bit red, so. Basically, people go onto this Reddit thread and they are like, am I the asshole for telling my sister her children can't come to my wedding? Like things like that, like perhaps like everyday situations. And then people respond from like an outsider's point of view and be like, yeah, you're kind of a bit of an asshole or you're not an asshole, you know, like that. So we have a few little situations we're gonna look at today and then talk about and see if these people are in fact assholes. Am I the asshole for asking my sister-in-law to stop treating my son as if it's theirs? As if it's theirs? You refer to your son as it? Okay, anyway. My 35 male, what? Sister-in-law, Laura, 33 female, what? I think the person who's writing it is a 35-year-old male. So we'll rephrase that. Me, 35 male, sister-in-law, Laura, 33 female, I think they changed their names and stuff like that, doesn't have a child. She's been through many miscarriages in the past too. That's sad. After my wife, Madison, 34 female, gave birth to our son, Ethan, we allowed Laura to interact with him. We dropped him at her house if we wanted someone to babysit, etc. Whenever they came here, she played with him and all that. That's normal, babysitting. You get your family to do that. Your family looks after your kids, right? Yesterday, we dropped him at her place again, and when we arrived, she was playing with him. We just remained there for a while and talked while she was playing with him. I heard her saying, "Where's your mother? Your mother's right here," referring to herself. That's weird. I did not like that, and Madison did not either. But it got worse. She said, "And your father's here to play with you as well," referring to her husband, Bob, 37 male. I was about to say something as I was shocked, but then I realized that Ethan now called them Mama and Dada for the first time. The first time he ever said his parents' name, and it was theirs. So this child, the first time they ever said mum or dad was to these people's brother and sister. Ugh. He'd never called us that before. Madison began to cry a lot. I got furious. I called Laura a fucking bitch and asked her what she was thinking to call them that. Her husband got mad and they began to argue, saying that he's as good as their son, etc. Madison accused her of being a goddamn backstabber. Oh God. And in the end, we took Ethan away from them by asking them to not treat my son as if it's theirs. Why do you keep saying it? It's your son. Laura was crying and her husband was shouting at us while we left. I was wondering whether I overreacted. I know that they don't have children, so did I do anything wrong? Am I the asshole? Listen, I would never be in that situation because I do not want children. But at the same time, if I had a child and the first time they said to someone, you know, mum or dad, and it was not their parents, I would be a little bit annoyed, right? Perhaps it's just a slip up. The kids hear words, they say things. But the fact that the brother and sister-in-law had been saying, call us mum and dad, that changes things. I would be pissed. Maybe not as pissed as that. Maybe I'd be like, listen, I'd rather you didn't refer to yourself as mum and dad. As you can see, our child just called you mum and dad. That was a special moment we were meant to experience. You know? I maybe wouldn't go off and be like, you fucking... But then I'm not up for like public arguments. Let's see what everyone else had to say. This person says, not the asshole. Their struggles to have a baby are incredibly sad. True. And I can see why you're tempted to give him a free pass, feel guilty for setting a reasonable boundary because of it. Yes. But it's deeply unhealthy and threatening, yeah, for them to be trying to displace you as Ethan's parents. It will be incredibly confusing for him and could result in genuine attachment problems and resentment as he gets older. Time to have a cool off period. Totally agree. That is kind of weird to be like, oh no, this is our child. You know, that is kind of like, kidnapping scenario, no? This is more worrisome than you may think. Having one person with a delusion, in this case it's often the mother, can be explained through, though not tolerated, but here you have two people living the delusion. This is a recipe for disaster. And I would be very careful, certainly going full NC for a long time. NC? No contact? Yeah. And as somebody rightly says underneath, they actually started to argue with the actual mother and father of this child, saying, the baby's also our child. It might as well be. If you're not the child's main caregiver, it's not your child. Am I the asshole for leaving the room when my nephew started crying? Depends how old the nephew is. This person is a 27-year-old female. I don't know why they do that. My parents celebrate an early Christmas so everyone could actually be together. Some of us are busy during the holidays with work. This included my sister, Amy, 29 female, and her family as well. She has a 6-month-old son, Andy. Apparently, he had come down with something because he was a bit restless the whole time. However, at this point, he started crying like crazy. Amy said this is something called colic. He was screaming so much, it felt like my head would explode. I excused myself and said I really couldn't stand the sound. Amy told me I couldn't be serious. I asked her what she meant. She said I was a horrible aunt because I barely spent any time with Andy since he was born. And I only cared about my job and changing my girlfriends every week. Oh, being spiteful here. I told her I didn't like kids crying and her child was now screaming at the top of his lungs. I asked her not to bring any personal weight into the situation. She called me an uptight asshole. My parents agree with her. Was I the arsehole? Okay, my opinion first. Slightly, slash. I'm not a child-friendly human. I'll give it that. Am I nice to kids? Sure. Do I want one? No. Would I move if I was on public transport and a kid was screaming at the top of its lungs? Could I discreetly move? Yes. I could remove myself from the situation. When we're someone's family, we're more likely to be honest though, right? And be like, your child's annoying me. But here's the deal. I do think though that some parents kind of become immune to the fact that their child is an inconvenience to some people. Sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. Yeah, people don't want to sit in a room and hear your child screaming. You may be used to it as a parent, you know, that's great. Now, would I have got up and be like, your child is really annoying me, so I'm going to leave? No, I think you have to practice some discretion. Tell me if I'm wrong. Although it's your sister, I don't have a child, but I understand that having a child from the day it's born up until it's about 20 years old can be extremely stressful. Would I make that situation worse by getting up and being like, your child is annoying me, I'm going to leave? No, listen, I'm really, really sorry. I'm just leaving the room. You said you work around the holidays. Perhaps there's a work call you have to take. Perhaps there's something you need to do quickly. Perhaps they're like, you know what would really help the situation? Let me go and get us something from the shop. I don't know, be like, I'm just popping out. You don't have to be, I know it's annoying and I'm with you on how annoying it is, but you don't have to be that rude. Okay, so this person says, not the asshole, not your kid, not your problem. Though you should know that caloric is air in the bowels. And it leaves a kid in excruciating pain. That's horrible. You still shouldn't be forced to listen to the ensuing crying, but a bit of empathy might sit well. I agree, that might be good. Perhaps the parent could take the child to another room where there's not as much happening in the room. You know, a little bit of mum and son time. Was it a daughter? Mum and baby time. You know what I mean? Babies crying is developed to pierce through everything. You can be empathetic while not being able to stand it. Yeah, I agree. If my own kids were constantly crying as newborns, didn't happen often thankfully, I had no problem putting in earplugs or noise cancelling headphones. Only while I was actively holding them and comforting them, tending to them of course, it actually made me better able to be empathetic and tend to their needs if I didn't feel like my head was going to explode from the shrieking. I'm sorry, but I can't stand the sound is a little bit like, you know, I think that's rude. Whether or not it's true, maybe I'm just extra polite in social situations. I would have rephrased it or come up with an excuse. Am I the asshole for pretending to be asleep instead of letting my roommate in? Wait a minute, this might not be funny. I, 19 female, live in a university dorm with my roommate, 18 female. This semester, we haven't really fought, but she's been continuously frustrating. On multiple occasions, she has forgotten her room key and asked me to let her in. This wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't such a common occurrence for her to expect me to run across campus for her to let her in at early hours. While being very unappreciative whenever I let her in, she could easily go to the residence help desk and get a spare key, as it is less than a block away and open 24/7. Oh, what's the problem then? But always chooses not to. She has also on multiple occasions given me no warning before replacing her key and in the process demagnetizing mine. So I guess they're like boop, like fob keys, right? Over reading week, she also called me numerous times asking me to search for her wallet and key in the room. This girl's annoying, I'm sorry. Even though I had told her and texted her that night that I was at home, hours away from the university. In addition to all this, it's clear that she hates living on residence and as such is overall just negative to be around. Now this is a part I might be the asshole. The other night I fell asleep at 2 AM after studying for finals. She came home at 5 AM and turned on all the lights. No. That's basic roommate thing. You don't just walk in and turn all the lights on. That's insane. That's really like, what's it called? Inconsiderate. This woke me up, but only enough to make my eyes open and look around before I fell back asleep as she left the room. She comes in, turns all the lights on and then leaves the room. As far as my roommate knew, I was asleep the whole time. A few minutes later, she tried to call me and my phone rang. I looked at my phone and when I saw it was her, I muted it, figuring she was trying to get me to let her back into our room. She tried calling me again and made my phone vibrate and fall onto the floor from my loft bed. I later found out she tried to call me 4 times. Eventually, she started continuously knocking loudly on the door. I still didn't get out of bed. After 5 minutes, she started calling my name and it was almost sounded like she was crying in the hall. It is exam season, so quiet hours were in effect especially strict. Eventually someone else let her in, probably the RA, resident assistant, on duty and our resident assistant down the hall. When she came back into the room, I was pretending to be asleep so she wouldn't know I was ignoring her the whole time. So Reddit, am I the asshole? I'm not sure why, but I never recorded like the replies and responses to this. My camera cut out and then I just never carried on. But overall, the consensus was not the asshole. Who wakes you up? Like, it's basic roommate courtesy. And I think kind of just like general knowledge, no, what's it called? Like human empathy and social etiquette. To realise that you don't just walk in the room at some ridiculous time in the morning while someone's sleeping and turn on all the lights. Like imagine just living at home with your parents, walking into your parents' room at 5 in the morning, turning on all the lights to grab, I don't know, toilet paper and then just walking straight out. Like you just don't do it. People in the responses also were saying not the arsehole. They were actually RAs who work in like university, college kind of complexes, saying that it's totally normal and it's their job, part of their job, to help people, you know, sort stuff like this out and get to their rooms safely and stuff like that. Do they make them wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes as a lesson? Yes, and it's a good lesson to teach because it's kind of annoying for everyone. But the general kind of overall conclusion was she is not in fact the asshole, and I agree. I've had roommates, well actually one, I've only ever had one roommate, and he was an absolute blessing to live with. But if this was the way my roommate acted, I would be less than impressed. All right, let me know below who was the asshole, who wasn't the asshole. Maybe you have a different opinion from me. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.